It was a subtle, important leadership lesson about when to intervene and when to build the confidence of an individual and a team. I think that is perhaps the number one thing that leaders have to do, to bolster the confidence of the people you're leading. That team captain went on to play many years of prestigious Ranji Trophy competition, and he taught me a very valuable lesson. Those early lessons from cricket shaped my leadership style, as have my experiences as a husband, a father, a young Microsoft engineer thrilled to be part of our company's visionary ascent, and later as an executive charged with building new businesses. My approach has never been to conduct business as usual. Instead, it's been to focus on culture and imagine what's possible. The culmination of these experiences has provided the raw material for the transformation we are undergoing today, a set of principles based on the alchemy of purpose, innovation, and empathy. The arrival of our son, Zain, in August 1996 had been a watershed moment in Anu's and my life together. His suffering from asphyxia in utero had changed our lives in ways we had not anticipated. We came to understand life's problems as something that cannot always be solved in the manner we want. Instead, we had to learn to cope. When Zain came home from the intensive care unit, ICU, Anu internalized this understanding immediately. There were multiple therapies to be administered to him every day, not to mention quite a few surgeries he needed that called for strenuous follow-up care after nerve-wracking ICU stays. All this entailed Anu lovingly placing him in the infant car seat and driving him, day after day from the early hours of the day, from therapist to therapist, not to mention frequent visits to the ICU unit at Seattle Children's Hospital. Children's became a second home for our family as Zain's medical file grew to over a foot high. We are today, as we always have been, so indebted to the staff at Children's who have loved and cared for Zain throughout his life, from infancy to young adulthood. During one ICU visit, after I took on my new role as CEO, I looked around Zain's room, filled with the soft buzzing and beeping of medical technology, and saw things differently. I noticed just how many of the devices ran on Windows and how they were increasingly connected to the cloud, that network of massive data storage and computational power that is now a fundamental part of the technology applications we take for granted today. It was a stark reminder that our work at Microsoft transcended business, that it made life itself possible for a fragile young boy. It also brought a new level of gravity to the looming decisions back at the office on our cloud and Windows 10 upgrades. We'd better get this right, I remember thinking to myself. My son's condition requires that I draw daily upon the very same passion for ideas and empathy that I learned from my parents, and I do this both at home and at work. Whether I am meeting with people in Latin America, the Middle East, or one of the inner cities of America, I am always searching to understand people's thoughts, feelings, and ideas. Being an empathetic father and bringing that desire to discover what is at the core, the soul, makes me a better leader. But it is impossible to be an empathetic leader sitting in an office behind a computer screen all day. An empathetic leader needs to be out in the world, meeting people where they live and seeing how the technology we create affects their daily activities. So many people around the world today depend on mobile and cloud technologies without knowing it. Hospitals, schools, businesses, and researchers rely on what's referred to as the public cloud, an array of large-scale, privacy-protected computers and data services accessible over a public network. Cloud computing makes it possible to analyze vast quantities of data to produce specific insights and intelligence, converting guesswork and speculation into predictive power. It has the power to transform lives, companies, and societies. Traveling the globe as CEO, I've seen example after example of this interplay between empathy and technology. Both in the state where I was born and the state in which I now live, schools use the power of cloud computing to analyze large amounts of data to uncover insights that can improve dropout rates. In Andhra Pradesh in India and in Tacoma, Washington, too many kids drop out of school. The problem is lack of resources, not lack of ambition. Cloud technology is helping improve outcomes for kids and families as intelligence from cloud data is now predicting which students are most likely to drop out of school so that resources can be focused on providing them the help they need. Thanks to mobile and cloud technologies, a startup in Kenya has built a solar grid that people living on less than $2 a day can lease to have safe, low-cost lighting and efficient cook stoves, replacing polluting and dangerous kerosene power. It's an ingenious plan because the startup can effectively create a credit rating, a byproduct of the service, which, for the first time, gives these Kenyans access to capital. This innovative mobile phone payment system enables customers living in Kenya's sprawling slums to make 40-cent daily payments for solar light, which in turn generates data that establishes a credit history to finance other needs. A university in Greece, leveraging cloud data, is working with firefighters in that country to predict and prevent massive wildfires like the one in 2007 that killed 84 people and burned 670,000 acres. Firefighters are now armed with intelligence on the rate of the fire's spread, intensity, movement of the perimeter, proximity to water supply, and microclimate weather forecasts from remote sensors, enabling them to catch fires early, saving lives and property. In Sweden, researchers are using cloud technologies to ensure that children are screened earlier and more accurately for dyslexia, a reading disorder that impacts educational outcomes for millions. Eye movement data analyzed at schools today can be compared with a dataset from those diagnosed with dyslexia 30 years ago. Diagnostic accuracy rates have increased from 70 to 95%, and the time to get a diagnosis has decreased from 3 years to 3 minutes. This means students, parents, and schools are prepared earlier and struggle less. In Japan, crowdsourced data collected from hundreds of sensors nationwide helped the public monitor radiation from the Fukushima nuclear plant to reduce risks to food quality and transportation. The 13 million measurements from 500 remote sensors generated a heat map that alerted authorities to threats to local rice production. And in Nepal, after the devastating earthquake there in April 2015, disaster relief workers from the United Nations used the public cloud to collect and analyze massive amounts of data about schools, hospitals, and homes to speed up access to compensatory entitlements, relief packages, and other assistance. Today, it's hard to imagine devices that are not connected to the cloud. Consumer applications like O365, LinkedIn, Uber, and Facebook all live in the cloud. There's a great scene in Sylvester Stallone's Creed, the latest of his Rocky movie series. The champ jots down on a piece of paper a workout regimen for his protege, who quickly snaps a photo of it on his smartphone. As the kid jogs away, Rocky yells, "Don't you want the paper?" "I got it right here. It's already up in the cloud," the kid replies. The aging Rocky looks skyward. "What cloud? What cloud?" Rocky may not know about the cloud, but millions of others rely on it. Microsoft is at the leading edge of today's game-changing cloud-based technologies, but just a few years ago, that outcome seemed very doubtful. By 2008, storm clouds were gathering over Microsoft. PC shipments, the financial lifeblood of Microsoft, had leveled off. Meanwhile, sales of Apple and Google smartphones and tablets were on the rise, producing growing revenues from search and online advertising that Microsoft hadn't matched. Meanwhile, Amazon had quietly launched Amazon Web Services, AWS, establishing itself for years to come as a leader in the lucrative, rapidly growing cloud services business. The logic behind the advent of the cloud was simple and compelling. The PC revolution of the 1980s, led by Microsoft, Intel, Apple, and others, had made computing accessible to homes and offices around the world. The 1990s had ushered in the client-server era to meet the needs of millions of users who wanted to share data over networks rather than on floppy disks. But the cost of maintaining servers in an ever-growing sea of data and the advent of businesses like Amazon, Office 365, Google, and Facebook simply outpaced the ability for servers to keep up. The emergence of cloud services fundamentally shifted the economics of computing. It standardized and pooled computing resources and automated maintenance tasks once done manually. It allowed for elastic scaling up or down on a self-service, pay-as-you-go basis. Cloud providers invested in enormous data centers around the world and then rented them out at a lower cost per user. This was the cloud revolution. Amazon was one of the first to cash in with AWS. They figured out early on that the same cloud infrastructure they used to sell books, movies, and other retail items could be rented, like a timeshare, to other businesses and startups at a much lower price than it would take for each company to build its own cloud. By June 2008, Amazon already had 180,000 developers building applications and services for their cloud platform. Microsoft did not yet have a commercially viable cloud platform. All of this spelled trouble for Microsoft. Even before the Great Recession of 2008, our stock had begun a downward slide. In a long-planned move, Bill Gates left the company that year to focus on the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. But others were leaving too. Among them, Kevin Johnson, president of the Windows and online services business, announced he would leave to become CEO of Juniper Networks. In their letter to shareholders that year, Bill and Steve Ballmer noted that Ray Ozzie, creator of Lotus Notes, had been named the company's new chief software architect, Bill's old title, reflecting the fact that a new generation of leaders was stepping up in areas like online advertising and search. There was no mention of the cloud in that year's shareholder letter, but to his credit, Steve had a game plan and a wider view of the playing field. Always a bold, courageous, and famously enthusiastic leader, Steve called me one day to say he had an idea. He wanted me to become head of engineering for the online search and advertising business that would later be relaunched as Bing, one of Microsoft's first businesses born in the cloud. For context, search engines generate revenue through a form of advertising known as an auction. Advertisers bid on search keywords that match their product or service. The winning bid gets an opportunity to display a relevant advertisement on the search results page. Search for a car, and a car dealership is likely paid to be displayed prominently on your results page. Delivering that purchase experience both from the consumer and the advertiser perspective is computationally expensive and sophisticated. And while Microsoft was struggling with low market share in search, Steve had invested in it because it would require the company to compete in a sector beyond Windows and Office and build great technology, which he saw as the future of our industry. There was tremendous pressure for Microsoft to answer Amazon's growing cloud business. This was the business he was inviting me to join. You should think about it, though, Steve added. This might be your last job at Microsoft, because if you fail, there is no parachute. You may just crash with it. I wondered at the time whether he meant it as a grim bit of humor or as a perfectly straightforward warning. I'm still not quite sure which it was. Despite the warning, the job sounded intriguing. I was running an emerging new business within Microsoft Dynamics. I had taken over from Doug Burgum, who later would become the governor of North Dakota. Doug was an inspirational leader who mentored me to become a more complete leader. He thought about business and work not in isolation, but as part of a broader societal fabric and a core part of one's life. Some of the lessons I learned from Doug are today an important part of who I am as a leader. Leading the Dynamics team was a dream job. For the first time, I was getting the chance to run a business end to end. I had spent nearly 5 years preparing for this job. I had all the relationships inside and outside Microsoft to drive the Dynamics business forward. But Steve's offer was essentially pushing me out of my comfort zone. I'd never worked in a consumer-facing business and had not really tracked Microsoft's search engine efforts or our early attempts to build cloud infrastructure. So one night, after a long day at work, I decided to drive over to Building 88, which housed the Internet Search Engineering team. I wanted to walk the hallways and see who these people were. How else could I empathize with the team I was being asked to lead? It was about 9 p.m., but the parking lot was packed. I'd expected to see a few stragglers finishing up their day, but no, the whole team was there, working at their desks and eating takeout food. I didn't really talk to anyone, But what I observed caused me to wonder, what gets people to work like this? Something important must be happening in Building 88. Seeing the team that night, their commitment and dedication clinched it for me. I told Steve, okay, I'm in. What color was my parachute? I didn't have one. I was entering a new world, and the move proved to be fortuitous. Little did I know it would be my proving ground for future leadership and the future of the company. Very quickly, I realized we would need 4 essential skills to build an online, cloud-based business that would be accessed primarily from mobile phones rather than desktop computer. First, I thought I knew a lot about distributed computer systems, but suddenly I realized I had to completely relearn these systems because of the cloud. A distributed system, simply put, is how software communicates and coordinates across networked computers. Imagine hundreds of thousands of people typing in search queries at the same time. If those queries landed in just one server somewhere in a room on the West Coast, it would break that server. But now imagine those queries being distributed evenly across a network of servers. The vast array of computing power would enable delivery of instant, relevant results to the consumer. And if there's more traffic, just add more servers. This elasticity is a core attribute of cloud computing architecture. Second, we had to become great at consumer product design. We knew we needed great technology, but we also understood we needed a great experience, one you want to engage with time and again. Traditional software design mapped out what developers thought a product should look like in a year's time when it would finally go to market. Modern software design involves online products updated through continuous experimentation. Designers offer web pages in flights, so an old version of Bing is delivered to some searchers while an untested new version reaches others. User scorecards determine which is the most effective. Sometimes seemingly tiny differences can mean a lot. Something as simple as the color or size of a type font may profoundly impact the willingness of consumers to engage, triggering behavioral variations that may be worth tens of millions in revenue. Now Microsoft had to master this new approach to product design. Third, we had to be great at understanding and building two-sided markets, the economics of a new online business. On one side are the consumers who go online for search results, and on the other side are the advertisers who want their businesses to be found. Both are needed to succeed. This creates the auction effect I was describing earlier. Both sides of the business are equally important, and designing the experience for both sides is crucial. Attracting more and more searchers obviously makes it easier to attract more and more advertisers, and showing the right advertisements is crucial to delivering relevant results. So bootstrapping the online auction and improving search results relevance would prove to be a vital challenge. Finally, we needed to be great at applied machine learning, ML. ML is a very rich form of data analytics that is foundational to artificial intelligence. We needed a sophisticated understanding of how to do two things at once, discern the intent of someone searching the web, and then match that intent with accurate knowledge gained from crawling the web, ingesting and understanding information. Ultimately, Bing would prove to be a great training ground for building the hyperscale, cloud-first services that today permeate Microsoft. We weren't just building Bing, we were building the foundational technologies that would fuel Microsoft's future. Building Bing taught us about scale, experimentation-led design, applied ML, and auction-based pricing. These skills are not only mission-critical at our company, but highly sought after throughout today's technology universe. But we started very much behind in search. We had yet to launch a product that could compete with Google. So I hit the road, meeting with executives from Facebook, Amazon, Yahoo, and Apple to evangelize our emerging search engine. I wanted to make deals, but I also wanted to learn more about how they engineered their products to stay fresh. I found that the key was agility, agility, agility. We needed to develop speed, nimbleness, and athleticism to get the consumer experience right, not just once, but daily. We needed to set and repeatedly meet short-term goals, shipping code at a more modern, fast-paced cadence. To accomplish this, we needed to periodically gather all of the decision-makers in a war room setting. In September 2008, I called together the search engineers for the first of these meetings, which we casually called Search Checkpoint Number 1. Perhaps we should have been more creative with the name, because it is stuck and now we're at a checkpoint in the many hundreds. We had decided to launch Bing in June 2009, a new search engine and a new brand. I learned a lot about creating urgency and mobilizing leaders with different skills and backgrounds toward one common goal in what was a new area for Microsoft. I realized that in a successful company, it is as important to unlearn some old habits as it is to learn new skills. My learning during this time was greatly accelerated by the hiring of Dr. Qi Lu as head of all online services at Microsoft. Qi had been an executive at Yahoo and was intensely recruited throughout Silicon Valley. Steve, Harry Shum, today our head of AI and research, and I had gone down to Bay Area to spend an afternoon talking to Qi. On the flight back, Steve said to me, "We should get him, but if you don't want to work for him, that will be a problem." Having just met with Qi, I knew that he was someone from whom I could learn a lot and Microsoft could benefit. So I did not hesitate in supporting the hiring of Qi to Microsoft, even though in some sense it was stalling my own promotion. I realized that my own professional growth would come from working for and learning from Qi during my time in our online business. Later, Qi would become an important member of my senior leadership team during the first few years I was CEO. Qi eventually left the company, but he continues to be a trusted friend and advisor. Over time, Yahoo integrated Bing as its search engine, and together we powered a quarter of all US searches. The search engine that many had said should be shuttered in its early days of struggle continued to win an expanding share of the market, and today it is a profitable, multi-billion-dollar business for Microsoft. Just as important, though, was how it helped to jumpstart our move to the cloud. As was so often the case at Microsoft, there were other experiments elsewhere in the company aimed at the same problem, leading to internal competition and even fiefdoms. Since 2008, Ray Ozzie had been incubating a highly secretive cloud infrastructure product with the code name Red Dog. A long-time Microsoft reporter, Mary Jo Foley, came across a job advertisement for a Red Dog engineer and wrote a piece speculating that this project must be Microsoft's answer to Amazon's AWS. At some point during my time at Bing, I met with the Red Dog team to explore how we might work together. I quickly realized that Microsoft's storied server and tools business, STB, where products like Windows Server and SQL Server had been invented and built, and where Red Dog was housed, was worlds apart from Bing. STB was Microsoft's third largest group by revenue after Office and Windows. They were the deep distributed systems experts. But when I contrasted STB with Bing, a few things were apparent. They lacked the feedback loop that comes from running an at-scale cloud service. I realized that they were caught up in the local maxima of servicing their existing customer base and were not learning fast enough about the new world of cloud services. And the Red Dog team was a side effort that was ignored by the mainstream of the STB leadership and organization. In late 2010, Ray Ozzie announced in a long internal memo that he was leaving Microsoft. He wrote in his departure email, "The one irrefutable truth is that in any large organization, any transformation that is to stick must come from within." While Red Dog was still in incubation and had booked little revenue, he was correct that the transformation of Microsoft would come from within. Steve had already proclaimed that the company was all in on the cloud, having invested $8.7 billion in research and development, much of it focused on cloud technologies. But even though engineers were working on cloud-related technologies, a clear vision of a Microsoft cloud platform had not yet surfaced, to say nothing of a real-world revenue stream. Right around that time, Steve asked that I lead STB, which today has evolved into Microsoft's cloud and enterprise business. I was given this news of my new role not even a week before I got the job. Steve had a sense that we needed to move faster to the cloud. He had personally and aggressively driven the transformation of our office business to the cloud. He wanted us to be equally bold when it came to cloud infrastructure. When I took over our fledgling cloud business in January 2011, analysts estimated that cloud revenues were already multi-billions of dollars, with Amazon in the lead and Microsoft nowhere to be seen. Meanwhile, revenues from our cloud services could be counted in the millions, not the billions. Although Amazon did not report its AWS revenues in those days, they were the clear leader, building a huge business without any real challenge from Microsoft. In his annual letter to shareholders in April 2011, just as I was beginning my new role, Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos gleefully offered a short course on the computer science and economics underlying their burgeoning cloud enterprise. He wrote about Bayesian estimators, machine learning, pattern recognition, and probabilistic decision-making. The advances in data management developed by Amazon engineers have been the starting point for the architectures underneath the cloud storage and data management services offered by Amazon Web Services, AWS, he wrote. Amazon was leading a revolution, and we had not even mustered our troops. Years earlier, I had left Sun Microsystems to help Microsoft capture the lead in the enterprise market, and here we were once again far behind. As a company, we'd been very publicly missing the mobile revolution, but we were not about to miss the cloud. I would miss working with colleagues at Bing, but I was excited to lead what I sensed would be the biggest transformation of Microsoft in a generation, our journey to the cloud. I had spent 3 years from 2008 to 2011 learning the cloud, pressure testing its infrastructure, operations, and economics, but as a user, not as a provider of the cloud. That experience would enable me to execute with speed in my new role. But it wouldn't be easy. The server and tools business was at the peak of its commercial success, and yet it was missing the future. The organization was deeply divided over the importance of the cloud business. There was constant tension between diverging forces. On the one hand, the division's leaders would say, yes, there is this cloud thing, and yes, we should incubate it. But on the other hand, they would quickly shift to warning, remember, we've got to focus on our server business. The servers that had made STB a force within Microsoft and the industry, namely Windows Server and SQL Server, were now holding them back, discouraging them from innovating and growing with the times. Shortly after I took over, the company issued this statement. Nadella and his team are tasked with leading Microsoft's enterprise transformation into the cloud and providing the technology roadmap and vision for the future of business computing. Steve had said the transformation would not happen overnight, but we were running out of time. I had a very good idea about where we needed to go, but I realized that my real task was to motivate the pride and desire in the STB leaders to go there with me. Sure, I had a point of view, but I also recognized this was a team that cared deeply about enterprises, those customers with exacting and sophisticated computing needs. I wanted to build on their institutional knowledge, and so I set out first to learn from the team I was to lead, and hopefully to earn the team's respect. Only then could we go boldly together to a new and better place. Leadership means making choices and then rallying the team around those choices. One thing I had learned from my dad's experience as a senior Indian government official was that few tasks are more difficult than building a lasting institution. The choice of leading through consensus versus fiat is a false one. Any institution building comes from having clear vision and culture that works to motivate progress both top-down and bottom-up. In business school, I had read Young Men and Fire, a book by Norman Maclean, best known for A River Runs Through It. It tells the story of a tragic forest fire that killed 13 smoke jumpers, parachuting firefighters, in 1949, and the investigation that followed. What I remembered was the lesson that went unheeded, the urgent need to build shared context, trust, and credibility with your team. The lead firefighter, who ultimately escaped the blaze, knew that he had to build a small fire in order to escape the bigger fire. But no one would follow him. He had the skills to get his men out of harm's way, but he hadn't built the shared context needed to make his leadership effective. His team paid the ultimate price. I was determined not to make the same mistake. Like that lead firefighter, I had to convince my team to adapt a counterintuitive strategy, to shift focus from the big server and tools business that paid everyone's salary to the tiny cloud business with almost no revenue. To win their support, I needed to build shared context. I decided not to bring my old team from Bing with me. It was important that the transformation come from within, from the core. It's the only way to make change sustainable. The team I inherited was more like a group of individuals. The poet John Donne wrote, "No man is an island," but he'd feel otherwise had he joined our meetings. Each leader in the group was, in essence, CEO of a self-sustaining business. Each lived and operated in a silo, and most had been doing so for a very long time. My portfolio had no center of gravity, and to make matters worse, many thought they should have gotten my job. Their attitude was one of frustration. They were making all this money, and now this little squeaky thing called the cloud came along, and they didn't want to bother with it. To break out of this impasse, I met with everyone on the STB leadership team individually, taking their pulse, asking questions and listening. Together, we had to see that our North Star would be a cloud-first strategy. Our products and technologies would optimize for the cloud, not just for private servers that resided on an organization's own premises. Though we would be cloud-first, our server strength would enable us to differentiate ourselves as the company that delivered a hybrid solution to customers who wanted both private, on-premise servers and access to the public cloud. This new framework helped reshape the argument, breaking down the resistance to going all in on the cloud. I began to notice a new openness to innovation and a search for creative ways to meet the needs of our commercial customers. Unfortunately, Red Dog, which had become Windows Azure, was still struggling. They were trying to leapfrog with a new approach to cloud computing, but the market was clearly giving them feedback that they first needed to meet their current needs. Mark Rusinovich, who was an early member of the Red Dog team and the current CTO of Azure, had a clear roadmap in mind to evolve Azure. We needed to infuse more resources into the team to execute on that roadmap. It was time to move Azure into the mainstream of STB rather than have it be a side project. People, the human element of any enterprise, are ultimately the greatest asset, and so I set about assembling the right team, starting with Scott Guthrie, a very accomplished Microsoft engineer. He had spearheaded a number of successful company technologies focused on developers. I tapped him to lead engineering for Azure on its way to becoming Microsoft's cloud platform, our answer to Amazon Web Services. Over time, many others from both inside and outside the company joined our effort. Jason Zander, another key leader who built .NET and Visual Studio, joined to lead the core Azure infrastructure. We recruited the highly regarded big data researcher Raghu Ramakrishnan from Yahoo and James Phillips, who had co-founded the database company Couchbase. We relied heavily on the expertise of Joy Chick and Brad Anderson to advance our device management solutions for the mobile world. Under their leadership, we made our first major steps in providing business customers the technology they need to secure and manage Windows, iOS, and Android devices. Julia Lewson took over our Visual Studio developer tools, evolving it to be the tool of choice for any developer, regardless of platform or app. Complementing these world-class engineers was world-class business planning and modeling. Takeshi Numoto moved from the Office team to join STB. Takeshi had been an important member of the team that had strategized and executed the transformation of Office products to a cloud-based subscription model. And in his role as business lead for STB, he set about building the new commercial model that was based on creating meters to measure consumption of cloud services and inventing new ways to package our products for customers. One of the early decisions I made was to differentiate Azure with our data and AI capabilities. Raghu and team designed and built a data platform that could help store and process exabyte-scale data. Microsoft was developing machine learning and AI capability as part of our products such as Bing, Xbox Connect, and Skype Translator. I wanted us to make this capability available to third-party developers as part of Azure. A key hire for Azure was Joseph Sirosh, who I recruited from Amazon. Joseph had been passionately working in ML for all his professional career, and he brought that passion to his new role at Microsoft. Now our cloud not only could store and compute massive amounts of data, it could also analyze and learn from the data. The practical value of ML is immense and incredibly varied. Take a Microsoft customer like ThyssenKrupp, a manufacturer in the elevator and escalator business. Using Azure and Azure ML, they can now predict in advance when an elevator or escalator will need maintenance, virtually eliminating outages and creating new value for its customers. Similarly, an insurer like MetLife can spin up our cloud with ML overnight to run enormous actuarial tables and have answers to its most crucial financial questions in the morning, making it possible for the company to adapt quickly to dramatic shifts in the insurance landscape, an unexpected flu epidemic, a more violent than normal hurricane season. Whether you are in Ethiopia or Evanston, Ohio, or if you hold a doctorate in data science or not, everyone should have that capability to learn from the data. With Azure, Microsoft would democratize machine learning, just as it had done with personal computing back in the 1980s. To me, meeting with customers and learning from both their articulated and unarticulated needs is key to any product innovation agenda. In my meetings with customers, I would usually bring other leaders and engineers along so that we could learn together. On one trip to the Bay Area, we met with several startups. It became clear that we needed to support the Linux operating system, and we had already taken some rudimentary steps toward that with Azure. But as Scott Guthrie and our team walked out of those meetings that day, it was certain that we needed to make first-class support for Linux in Azure. We made that decision by the time we got to the parking lot. This may sound like a purely technical dilemma, but it also posed a profound cultural challenge. Dogma at Microsoft had long held that the open-source software from Linux was the enemy. We couldn't afford to cling to that attitude any longer. We had to meet the customers where they were, and more importantly, we needed to ensure that we viewed our opportunity not through a rear-view mirror, but with a more future-oriented perspective. We changed the name of the product from Windows Azure to Microsoft Azure to make it clear that our cloud was not just about Windows. To scale our cloud business, we not only needed to build the right technology, but we needed to run a service to meet the exacting needs of some of the world's largest customers. We were already running at-scale services such as Bing, Office 365, and Xbox Live, but with Azure we were now powering thousands of other businesses every minute of every day. Our team had to learn to embrace what I called live site first culture. The operational culture was as important as any key technology breakthrough. We would have on a single Skype call dozens of engineers plus our customer-facing field teams, all of whom would swarm together to coordinate and fix any problem. And every such incident would lead to rigorous root cause analysis so that we could continuously learn and improve. I would, from time to time, join these calls to see our engineers in action. The key is to not have the top leaders infuse fear or panic, but to help foster the actions that fix the issue at hand and the learning from it. Today, Microsoft is on course to have its own $20 billion cloud business. We had looked beyond the packaged products that had made Microsoft one of the most valuable companies in the world to see greater opportunity in our cloud platform, Azure, and cloud services like O365, the online version of our hugely popular Office productivity suite. We are investing in and improving these new products, building new muscle as a service provider, and embracing Linux and other open source efforts, all while keeping focus on our customers. The cloud business taught me a series of lessons I would carry with me for years to come. Perhaps the most important is this: a leader must see the external opportunities and the internal capability and culture and all of the connections among them, and respond to them before they become obvious parts of the conventional wisdom. It's an art form, not a science, and a leader will not always get it right. But the batting average for how well a leader does this is going to define his or her longevity in business. It's an insight that would serve me well when an even bigger set of challenges was presented to me as CEO. Chapter 3. New Mission, New Momentum. Rediscovering the Soul of Microsoft. On the morning of February 4th, 2014, the day I would be formally introduced as CEO for the first time, I drove to campus early, rehearsing the messages I wanted to land with employees on day one. Over the Thanksgiving break, I had banged out a 10-page memo responding to several questions the board of directors had posed during the search process. I then refined it on a road trip that took me to Dell in Texas and Hewlett-Packard in Silicon Valley. The questions required a lot of soul-searching. What is my vision? What is the strategy to achieve it? What does success look like, and where to get started? Now, a few months later, I reflected on what I had written and the process that led to this day. Finding the next CEO had been a long journey. Steve had surprised everyone by announcing in August that he would retire, just after he had led a major reorganization of the company and on the eve of announcing the $7.2 billion deal with the Finnish smartphone manufacturer Nokia. Throughout the fall, reporters routinely speculated about who would be named as his replacement. Would it be an outsider like Ford Motor Company's CEO Alan Mulally, or the executive of a Microsoft acquisition like Tony Bates of Skype or Stephen Elop of Nokia? Several of us were asked to put our ideas on paper for the board of directors as a sort of audition for the job. In my memo to the board, I'd drawn on more than 20 years of experience inside the company, but I'd also drawn on something Steve Ballmer, the departing CEO, told me. He encouraged me to be my own man. In other words, don't try to please Bill Gates or anyone else. Be bold, be right, he told me. Bill and Paul Allen founded Microsoft. Bill and Steve built Microsoft. As founder, Bill had famously recruited Steve out of Stanford Business School in 1980 to become his first business manager. Steve, the passionate leader, salesman, and marketer, and Bill, the technology visionary whose voracious reading and think weeks kept Microsoft ahead of envious competitors. Together they formed one of the most iconic business partnerships in history, a pioneer in computing that would make Microsoft the most valuable company on the planet. Not only did they build great products, but they shaped hundreds of executives who today run global businesses everywhere, including me. They had given me more and more responsibility over the years and taught me that our software can impact not just the lives of computer hobbyists, but entire societies and economies. Despite my devotion to what they had built, Steve didn't want me to be confused. He was inviting me to throw dogma out the window. He knew more than anyone that the company had to change, and he selflessly stepped out of his role as CEO to ensure the change happened in a deep way. As a consummate insider, I was being told to start anew, to refresh the browser and load a new page, the next page in Microsoft's history. And so, my memo to the board called for a renewal of Microsoft. It would require embracing more ubiquitous computing and ambient intelligence. This means humans will interact with experiences that span multitude of devices and sensors. All these experiences will be powered by intelligence in the cloud and also at the edge where data is being generated and interactions with people are taking place. But this renewal would only happen, I wrote, if we prioritized the organization's culture and built confidence both inside and outside the company. It would be only too easy to continue to live off our past successes. We had been like kings, albeit now in a threatened kingdom. There were ways to cash cow this business and drive short-term return, but I believed we could build long-term value by being true to our identity and innovating. I pulled into a parking space outside Studio D, home of our Xbox development team. This part of the campus didn't even exist when I started at Microsoft in 1992, and yet now it was surrounded by several dozen low-slung office buildings as far as the eye could see. Over the next hour, Studio D's glassy 3-story atrium would fill with employees invited to an all-company meeting and webcast. I knew they were hopeful, but also skeptical. One had only to look at a few industry charts to see why. After decades of steady growth in worldwide PC shipments, sales had peaked and were now in decline. Quarterly PC shipments were now around 70 million, while smartphone shipments were reaching over 350 million. This was bad news for Microsoft. Every PC sold meant a royalty payment to Microsoft. To make matters worse, not only were PC sales soft, but so was interest in Windows 8, launched 18 months earlier. Meanwhile, Android and Apple operating systems were surging, reflections of the smartphone explosion that we at Microsoft had failed to lead and barely managed to participate in. As a result, Microsoft's stock, long a blue-chip investment, had been treading water for years. Internally, the story was equally dire. That year, our annual employee poll revealed that most employees didn't think we were headed in the right direction and questioned our ability to innovate. To bring this home, Jill Tracy Nichols, my chief of staff at the time, shared new focus group feedback from hundreds of employees so I could get a real-time pulse of the organization in the midst of the change. The company was sick. Employees were tired. They were frustrated. They were fed up with losing and falling behind despite their grand plans and great ideas. They came to Microsoft with big dreams, but it felt like all they really did was deal with upper management, execute taxing processes, and bicker in meetings. They believed that only an outsider could get the company back on track. None of the names on the rumored list of internal CEO candidates resonated with them, including mine. In an intense prep session 2 days before the announcement, Jill and I sparred on how to inspire this disheartened group of brilliant people. In some ways, I was annoyed by what felt like lack of accountability and finger-pointing. She stopped me mid-riff with, "You're missing it. They are actually hungry to do more, but things keep getting in their way." Job one was to build hope. This was day one of our transformation. I knew it must start from within. A few minutes later, I stood on stage for a photo that would soon go viral. It captured the smiling faces of Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer, and me, the only CEOs in Microsoft's 40-year history. The image I remember even more vividly, however, is looking into the eyes of hundreds of Microsoft employees in the audience, waiting for my presentation, their faces reflecting hope, excitement, and energy mingled with anxiety and a touch of frustration. Like me, they'd come to Microsoft to change the world, but now were frustrated by our company's stalled growth. They were being wooed by competitors. Saddest of all, many felt the company was losing its soul. Steve kicked things off with a moving and encouraging speech. Bill spoke next, his dry sense of humor immediately present. Surveying the room, he feigned surprise at what a large market share Windows Phone enjoyed in this room. Then he got down to business. Bill succinctly captured the challenge and the opportunity that lay ahead. Microsoft was founded based on a belief in the magic of software, and I'd say that opportunity today is stronger than it's ever been. The magic of what we can do for people at work and at home with our software is totally in front of us. We've got some amazing strengths with the Windows platform, the things we're doing in the cloud, with Office, and we've got some challenges. There are a lot of people out there on the cloud doing interesting things. There's a lot of mobile activity, which we've got a slice of, but not as big a slice as we need to have. Then he called me forward. When the applause subsided, I wasted no time in calling my colleagues and teammates to action. Our industry does not respect tradition. What it respects is innovation. It's our collective challenge to make Microsoft thrive in a mobile-first and a cloud-first world. If there was any one theme I wanted to emphasize that day, it was that we must discover what would be lost in the world if Microsoft just disappeared. We had to answer for ourselves. What is the company about? Why do we exist? I told them it was time for us to rediscover our soul, what makes us unique. One of my favorite books is Tracy Kidder's The Soul of a New Machine, about another tech company, Data General, in the 1970s. In it, Kidder teaches us that technology is nothing more than the collective soul of those who build it. The technology is fascinating, but even more fascinating is the profound obsession of its designers. And so what is soul in this context of a company? I don't mean soul in a religious sense. It is the thing that comes most naturally. It is the inner voice. It's what motivates and provides inner direction to apply your capability. What is the unique sensibility that we as a company have? For Microsoft, that soul is about empowering people, and not just individuals, but also the institutions they build. Enterprises like schools, hospitals, businesses, government agencies, and non-profits. Steve Jobs understood what the soul of a company is. He once said that design is the fundamental soul of a man-made creation that ends up expressing itself in successive outer layers of the product or service. I agree. Apple will always remain true to its soul as long as its inner voice, its motivation, is about great design for consumer products. The soul of our company is different. I knew that Microsoft needed to regain its soul as the company that makes powerful technology accessible to everyone and every organization, democratizing technology. When I first wore HoloLens, Microsoft's holographic computer, I thought about how it might be used by large enterprises for design and in schools and hospitals, not just how much fun playing Minecraft will be. It's not that we had lost our soul, but we needed renewal, a renaissance. In the 1970s, Bill and Paul Allen started Microsoft with the goal of helping to put a computer on every desk and in every home. That was a bold, inspiring, and audacious ambition, one they accomplished. Democratizing and personalizing technology. How many organizations can say they achieved their founding mission? There is no way I would become CEO of a Fortune 500 company if it was not for the democratizing force of Microsoft all over the world. But the world had changed, and it was time for us to change our view of the world. Worldview is an interesting term rooted in cognitive philosophy. Simply put, it is how a person comprehensively sees the world across political, social, and economic borders. What are the common experiences we all share? The question I had been asking before becoming CEO, why do we exist, forced me to change my tech worldview, and similarly, now every leader at Microsoft was changing theirs as well. We no longer lived in a PC-centric world. Computing was becoming more ubiquitous. Intelligence was becoming more ambient, meaning computers could observe, collect data, and turn that feedback into insights. We were seeing an ever-increasing wave of digitization of our life, business, and our world more broadly. This was made possible by an ever-growing network of connected devices, incredible computing capacity from the cloud, insights from big data, and intelligence from machine learning. I simplified all of this and encouraged Microsoft to become mobile first and cloud first. Not PC first or even phone first. We needed to envision a world where the mobility of the human experience across all devices was what mattered, and the cloud made that mobility possible, enabling the new generation of intelligent experiences. The transformation we would undertake across all parts of our businesses would help Microsoft and our customers thrive in this new world. It might be easy to be motivated to change through envy. We could envy what Apple had built with its iPhone and its iPad franchise, or what Google had created with its low-cost Android phones and tablets. But envy is negative and outer-directed, not driven from within. And so I knew that it wouldn't carry us very far down the path to true renewal. We could also motivate ourselves through competitive zeal. Microsoft is known for rallying the troops with competitive fire. The press loves that, but it's not me. My approach is to lead with a sense of purpose and pride in what we do, not envy or combativeness. Our senior leadership team recognized a gap in the competitive landscape that Microsoft was in the unique position to fill. You see, while our competitors define their products as mobile, we could be about the mobility of human experiences made possible by our cloud technologies. These two trends together, mobile and cloud, were fundamental to our transformation. In fact, our marketing chief, Chris Capicella, would produce an ad for the Microsoft Cloud based on a speech I gave on this subject. In the ad, Spain's Real Madrid soccer team is seen attacking, nimbly sprinting toward the goal as Grammy Award-winning hip-hop artist Common tells the audience, "We live in a world of mobile technology, but it is not the device that is mobile, it is you." The ad, though made for our broader audiences, also helped remind us of our core, the soul that we almost lost. Microsoft had led the PC revolution by enabling the highest volume, most affordable computing devices. But Google, with its free Android operating system, found a way to undercut Windows, something we did not react to quickly enough. In 2008, the Linux-based Android smartphone gobbled up market share, and today it runs on more than 1 billion activated devices. Looking back, the Nokia deal, announced in September 2013, 5 months before I would become CEO, became another painful example of this loss. We were desperate to catch up after missing the rise of mobile technology. Nokia, which had overtaken Motorola in the 1990s as the largest mobile phone manufacturer, had lost ground to Apple's iPhone and Google's Android phones. Nokia fell from the market share leader in mobile to number 3. By 2012, in a risky move to regain ground, Nokia's CEO Stephen Elop announced it would make Windows the primary operating system for Nokia smartphones. Nokia and Microsoft did make progress, achieving double-digit market share in some European countries, but we still remained a distant third. The hope behind the acquisition was that combining the engineering and design teams at Nokia with software development at Microsoft would accelerate our growth with Windows Phone and strengthen our overall device ecosystem. The merger could be the big, dramatic move Windows needed to catch up with iOS and Android in mobile. The press criticized the idea, and the Microsoft board was resistant. Over the summer, while still in negotiations to buy Nokia outright, Steve Ballmer asked the members of his leadership team, his direct reports, to vote thumbs up or thumbs down on the deal. He wanted a public vote to see where the team was on the matter. I voted no. While I respected Steve and understood the logic of growing our market share to build a credible third ecosystem, I did not get why the world needed the third ecosystem in phones unless we changed the rules. A few months after I became CEO, the Nokia deal closed and our teams worked hard to relaunch Windows Phone with new devices and a new operating system that came with new experiences. But it was too late to regain the ground we had lost. We were chasing our competitors' taillights. Months later, I would have to announce a total write-off of the acquisition, as well as plans to eliminate nearly 18,000 jobs, the majority of them because of the Nokia devices and services acquisition. It was heartbreaking to know that so many talented people who gave so much of themselves to their work would lose their jobs. There are many lessons a leader can take from the Nokia acquisition. Buying a company with weak market share is always risky. What we needed most was a fresh and distinctive approach to mobile computing. Where we went wrong initially was failing to recognize that our greatest strengths were already part of the soul of our company, inventing new hardware for Windows, making computing more personal, and making our cloud services work across any device and any platform. We should only be in the phone business when we have something that is really differentiated. We did ultimately follow up on this key insight. We focused our efforts more narrowly by building Windows Phone with organizations in mind. For example, these business customers now love Continuum, a feature that makes it possible for a phone to replace a PC. To further participate in mobile, we also made Office run across devices. In retrospect, what I regret most is the impact these layoffs had on very talented, passionate people in our phone division. Early in my new role, Bill Gates and I walked together from one building to the next to meet with a reporter from Vanity Fair. Bill had decided to remain on the board but would step down as chairman. The foundation he'd co-founded with his wife, Melinda, would now be his primary focus, but he remained passionate about software and about Microsoft. On our walk, he enthusiastically talked about a new product that would blur the lines between a document and a website. We brainstormed how to develop an architecture that would enable rich capabilities for composing a report, but instead of a static page, it would have all the richness of an interactive website. We quickly got into the weeds, volleying ideas back and forth about visualization data structures and storage systems. At one point, Bill looked at me, smiled, and said it was good to be talking software engineering. I knew that part of rediscovering the company's soul was to bring Bill back, to engage him more deeply in the technical vision for our products and services. Reviewing a software product with Bill is the stuff of legend at Microsoft. In his comical 1994 novel, Microserfs, Douglas Copeland wrote a humorous sketch of Bill's influence on a Microsoft programmer. A developer named Michael locks himself in his office at 11 a.m. after getting a flame mail from Bill, who had reviewed some of his code. No one on his floor had ever been flamed by Bill personally. The episode was tinged with glamour, and we were somewhat jealous. By 2:30 a.m., concerned about Michael, his team goes to the 24-hour Safeway for flat food that can be slipped underneath his door. While this exaggerated legend doesn't exactly capture the culture I hope to create, I knew that getting our founder back in the product development loop would inspire our people and up our game. Over the first several months of my tenure, I devoted a lot of time to listening to anyone and everyone, just as I had promised to do in that Thanksgiving memo to the board. I met with all of our leaders and made a point of going out, as I always had, to meet with partners and customers. As I listened, there were two questions I was still trying to answer. The first, why are we here? Answering this question would be central to defining the company for years to come. The second question was, what do we do next? There is that great closing scene in The Candidate when Robert Redford, having finally won the election, pulls his advisor into a room and asks, what do we do now? For starters, I decided to listen. Straight away, I heard from hundreds of employees at every level and in every part of the company. We held focus groups to allow people to share their opinions anonymously as well. Listening was the most important thing I accomplished each day because it would build the foundation of my leadership for years to come. To my first question, why does Microsoft exist? The message was loud and clear. We exist to build products that empower others. That is the meaning we're all looking to infuse into our work. I heard other things as well. Employees wanted a CEO who would make crucial changes, but one who also respected the original ideals of Microsoft, which had always been to change the world. They wanted a clear, tangible, and inspiring vision. They wanted to hear more frequently about progress in transparent and simple ways. Engineers wanted to lead again, not follow. They wanted to up the coolness. We had technology the press would fawn over in Silicon Valley, such as leading-edge artificial intelligence, but we weren't showing it off. What they really demanded was a roadmap to remove paralysis. For example, Google made headlines with glitzy demonstrations of their artificial intelligence experiments, while we had world-class speech and vision recognition and advanced machine learning that we kept under wraps. The real challenge I was contemplating, though, was how do we take our technologies and do things that speak to our identity and add unique value for our customers? On my second question, where do we go from here, I became convinced that the new CEO of Microsoft needed to do several things very well right away during the first year. Communicate clearly and regularly our sense of mission, worldview, and business and innovation ambitions. Drive cultural change from top to bottom and get the right team in the right place. Build new and surprising partnerships in which we can grow the pie and delight customers. Be ready to catch the next wave of innovation and platform shifts. Reframe our opportunity for a mobile and cloud-first world and drive our execution with urgency. Stand for timeless values and restore productivity and economic growth for everyone. This list does not suggest a formula for success, since even today Microsoft is still very much in the midst of change. We will not know the lasting impact of our approach for some time. But between the summers of 2014 and 2015, we pushed for change with a steady drumbeat. Having listened with great intensity and curiosity during those first several months, it was time to act, and to do so with confidence and conviction. My first title at Microsoft had been evangelist, a common term in technology for someone who drives a standard or product to achieve critical mass. Now here I was, evangelizing the notion that we needed to rediscover our soul. The mission of a company is in many ways a statement about its soul, and that's where I went first. To make things real and drive fidelity of the ideas through an organization of 100,000 plus people operating across more than 190 countries, we developed a clear connection between our mission and our culture. We defined our mission, worldview, ambitions, and culture in one page. No small feat for a company that loves massive PowerPoint decks. That was the relatively easy part. The harder part was to not tweak it, to let it stand. I'd want to edit a word here or there, add a row, just tinker with it before each speech. Then I'd be reminded again, consistency is better than perfection. In the years prior to taking on my new role, the executive team spent far too much time trying to explain the massive company and our strategy. We needed a shared understanding. The simple framework we came up with catalyzed people to bring these ideas to life. The work in these first few years of my tenure was all about getting the flywheel of change spinning. Sure, it took regular communications, but it also took discipline and consistency on my part and that of the senior leadership team. We needed to inspire and drive change. We challenged ourselves. At the end of the next year, if we were tried in a court of law and the charge was that we failed to pursue our mission, would there be enough evidence to convict us? Just saying interesting things wasn't enough. All of us, had to do them. And our employees had to see how everything we did reinforced our mission, ambitions, and culture. And then they needed to start doing the same. Our 3 ambitions defined how we organized teams and reported results. Our mission guided where I visited and who I met while I was there. My travel itinerary frequently started with a visit to a school or hospital in the community. I particularly enjoyed ceremonies with the indigenous peoples in Colombia and New Zealand, learning about how they use Microsoft technology to preserve their history and traditions for generations and how they think about growth. Beyond this, we were greenlighting mothballed products and projects, inviting new partnerships with competitors, showing up in surprising places, making accessibility a first-class citizen in our product design efforts, and constantly traveling the world to engage our people, partners, and customers. On Thursday, July the 10th, 2014, only a few days into the start of Microsoft's new fiscal year, I sent an all-company email, a sort of manifesto, at 6:02 a.m. so that it landed in inboxes at the beginning of the day in all US time zones and before the weekend for employees around the world. We are a global company, and we needed to think like one. In order to accelerate our innovation, we must rediscover our soul, our unique core. We must all understand and embrace what only Microsoft can contribute to the world and how we can, once again, change the world. I consider the job before us to be bolder and more ambitious than anything we have ever done. Microsoft is the productivity and platform company for the mobile-first, cloud-first world. We will reinvent productivity to empower every person and every organization on the planet to do more and achieve more. I wrote that productivity for us goes well beyond documents, spreadsheets, and slides. We will obsess over helping people who are swimming in a growing sea of devices, apps, data, and social networks. We will build software to be more predictive, personal, and helpful. We will think about customers as dual users, people who use technology for their work, their school, and their personal digital life. In the email, I inserted the image of a target, and in its center appeared the words, digital work and life experiences, surrounded by our cloud platform and computer devices. Soon there will be 3 billion people connected to the internet, sensors, and the Internet of Things, IoT. Yes, PC sales were slowing, and so we needed to convert Nietzsche's courage in the face of reality into courage in the face of opportunity. We needed to win the billions of connected devices, not fret about a shrinking market. Employees responded immediately. In just the first 24 hours, I heard from hundreds of employees in every part of the company and in every part of the world. They said the language of empowering everyone on the planet to achieve more inspired them personally, and they saw how it applied to their daily work, whether they were a coder, designer, marketer, or customer support technician. Many offered helpful suggestions and ideas. One of my favorites was to challenge conventional thinking more. Why is Xbox a box, since traditional television and cable boxes are fading? What if Kinect, our motion sensing technology used for video games and robotics, came with wings or wheels so it could go fetch lost keys or wallets? Many wrote to me to say that after years of frustration, they felt a new energy. I was determined not to squander that. The press covering Microsoft were given copies of the email and immediately offered their takes on Microsoft's future under my leadership. The New York Times focused on the cultural change underway. The Washington Post delighted in my knack for squeezing literary references into the spaces between his required lines. Bloomberg warned that if Microsoft was going to succeed in both the corporate and consumer world with productivity as its focus, it will need to deliver some products that live up to the rhetoric. They were right. We wanted customers not just to use our products, but to love them. Articulating our core raison d'être and business ambitions was a good first step, but I also needed to get the right people on the bus to join me in leading these changes. A few weeks later, I announced that Peggy Johnson, a longtime Qualcomm executive, would join as head of business development, striking deals to acquire and partner with exciting new products and services. Within a few weeks, we bought Minecraft, the popular online game, which we knew would boost engagement with our cloud and our devices. A few weeks after that, I announced that Kathleen Hogan, who was leading our global consulting and support business with experience at McKinsey, a worldwide managing consulting firm, and Oracle, would become our Chief People Officer and my partner in the cultural transformation to come. I persuaded Kurt Delbene, who had once led our office division, to return as Chief Strategy Officer after he was handpicked by President Obama to fix healthcare.org, the nation's health insurance website. We had 2 people overseeing marketing, and I chose to give the entire role to Chris Capicella. Scott Guthrie, who had been my engineering partner in building the cloud business, was chosen to lead cloud and enterprise, our fastest growing business. Over time, these changes meant that some executives left. They were all talented people, but the senior leadership team needed to become a cohesive team that shared a common worldview. For anything monumental to happen, great software, innovative hardware, or even a sustainable institution, there needs to be one great mind or a set of agreeing minds. I don't mean yes men and yes women. Debate and argument are essential. Improving upon each other's ideas is crucial. I wanted people to speak up. Oh, here's a customer segmentation study I've done. Here's a pricing approach that contradicts this idea. It's great to have a good old-fashioned college debate. But there also has to be high-quality agreement. We needed a senior leadership team, SLT, that would lean into each other's problems, promote dialogue, and be effective. We needed everyone to view the SLT as his or her first team, not just another meeting they attended. We needed to be aligned on mission, strategy, and culture. I like to think of the SLT as a sort of legion of superheroes, with each leader coming to the table with a unique superpower to contribute for the common good. Amy is our conscience, keeping us intellectually honest and accountable for doing what we committed to do. Kurt pushes us on being rigorous about our strategy and operations. Product leaders like Terry, Scott, Harry, and more recently Rajesh Jha and Kevin Scott push for alignment on product plans, knowing that when we are an inch apart on strategy at the leadership level, our product teams end up miles apart in execution. Brad helps us navigate the ever-evolving legal and policy landscape, always finding just the right position on important global and domestic issues. Kathleen constantly channels the voice of our employees. Peggy does the same for partners, and Chris, Jean-Philippe Courtois, and Judson Althoff for our customers. They are the true heroes of our continuing transformation.
This is the end of the disc. The audiobook continues on the next disc.